Hello, fourth year students. I hope that you are doing very well. We are meeting this year to study together a course entitled Test Design and Assessment. In this course, and of course it is clear from the title, we are going to learn together how to make a test, how to design a test in order to measure the abilities and the knowledge of our students that whom we are going to teach English, okay, and we are going to measure their abilities or the knowledge that they have in the different components and the skills of the language. Before we start learning how to design a test and what are the types of the tests that can be adopted or depended on in testing foreign language skills and components, we need to have some theoretical background about, for example, the important terms that we need to know about the test, the features of a good test, the types of the test, the procedures of administering, for example, the test and scoring the test. All these things we need to be familiar with before learning how to make the items of the test. Okay? So the first thing we are going to start with is trying to understand three important terms in the field of testing in general, not only language test, but the terms, the three terms that we are going to study here are repeated in the field of testing in general, whether we are testing math, science, social studies, or English as a foreign language. These three terms are test, assessment, and evaluation. Some people they say that these three terms are used interchangeably, but in fact they are not. There are some differences that we need to understand between these three terms. If we start with the first term, which is a test, what is a test? Okay, so in order to answer this question, which is that what is a test, I'm going to list for you a number of definitions, explain these definitions, and at the same time I will pinpoint the repeated terms used in these definitions that describe the test. The first definition says that a test is a critical examination, observation, or evaluation. So you see, a test is what is a test? It is an examination, observation, or evaluation used to measure. You see, used to measure. Measure what? The skills, knowledge, intelligence, capacities, or aptitudes of an individual or group of people. Okay, let us see the second definition, which says that a test is a tool, technique, or a method that is intended to measure. You see, there is a repetition for the word measure. So again, the purpose of the test is what? To measure. To measure what? Students' knowledge or their abilities to complete a particular task. So again, we have the repetition of the same purpose of the test, which is what? To measure students' abilities and knowledge in a certain field. The third definition says that a test is used to examine. You see, examine. And here is supposed definition number one, because definition number one says that a test is a critical examination. So here, the test is what is used to examine someone's knowledge. Again, knowledge of something to determine what he or she knows or has learned. So you see here, knows or has learned. So this means that you can make a test at the beginning of your course, of the course that you are teaching your students, to have an idea about the things that they know about the topic or main subjects that you are going to teach in your course. Okay? Or has learned. Has learned means that you are going to make a test at the end of the course to measure what your students have learned from the course. Okay? You are going to determine, you are going to measure the knowledge they have obtained, the abilities they have developed throughout the course. Or you can make your test within your course. Okay, whenever you finish teaching a certain item in the course, you can make a test or test your student. You can test your student even if it is a short quiz. A quiz is a type of a test. Okay, for instance, here I can make a short quiz after I finish this class, okay, to ask you about the things that you understood from the points or the items that I have presented. So you see, testing does not have a particular time. It can be conducted at the beginning, at the end, or within the course. But all these things, or all these procedures, they have one aim, which is to measure the knowledge of your students and their abilities. Definition number 4 says that a test is an educational assessment tool. Pay attention, please, to these three terms. It is an educational, which means that it is used within the educational institutions or academic institutions like schools, universities. Okay? Then it says that it is an assessment tool. Remember, the second term that we are going to study is assessment. So this definition gives us an idea about the relationship between test and assessment. As this means, or we can understand from this definition, that a test is a tool of assessment, is one instrument that the teacher can depend on or can employ in the process of assessment. So now, which one is bigger now, or which one involves the other? We understand that assessment is bigger than test or testing. Assessment includes testing, and testing is one of the tools that the teacher can depend on in the process of assessment. Please keep this relationship in your mind, because we are going to study, after we finish discussing all these three terms, we are going to study the relationship between them. Okay? So, a test is an educational assessment tool that is used, you see, to measure. Again, this is the fourth time we are mentioning the word or the term measure. The purpose of the test is to measure. To measure what? The test takers. What do we mean by the test takers? Who takes the test? Of course, he is a student, or she is a student. So when I say test taker, I mean the student, the learner. So what am I going to measure in the test taker? I am going to measure the test taker's knowledge, skills, aptitude, abilities, or a mixture of them. So test can either be specific to measure one item of these things, or a mixture of them, more than one item. Definition number 5 says that a test is a formal, systematic, usually paper and pencil procedure used to gather information about students' behavior. And this definition is taken from one of our textbooks written by Christine Coombe. Okay? So, when we read carefully this definition, we can see that Christine Coombe again describes the test as a formal procedure. And this supports what we have in definition number 4 when we said the test is what? An educational tool. Okay? So test is not an informal thing or a process or procedure. No, it is usually conducted for formal reasons, informal situations, informal institutions, academic institutions. Okay? Systematic. It should follow a system. Okay, a system in designing it, a system in time. Okay, usually paper and pencil. She says here that usually it has this form, a written form, paper and pencil form, which means that it is a written form. This means that the test can be or can have other forms. Okay, it can be oral. Okay, it can be in the form of an interview. Is it clear? So you see here, sorry. So you see here, it is formal, it is systematic, and also Christine Coombe here refers to that or mentions that it can be of different forms. But she says that most of the times, or mostly, or usually, it is or it has a written form. Okay, used to what? Used for what for? Or to gather information about students' behavior. What is the behavior that we expect to have from students in formal institutions or academic institutions? Of course, they come to these institutions, to this academic context, in order to learn. So we are measuring what? We are measuring, or what kind of information that we are gathering about this student. This information, of course, is related to what? To their knowledge, their abilities, and their skills that they have learned and developed throughout the whole course. Okay. Definition number 6 said, a test is a measuring device. You see, again, the test is described as being a measuring device. The same term has been repeated over and over to emphasize one idea only, which is what? Which is the purpose of the test. What is the purpose of the test? Is to measure. Okay? So it is a measuring device, no different in principle from a ruler, a weighing scale, or a thermometer. So, for what purposes we use these things? What is the purpose that we use a ruler for? Or the scale, or a thermometer? Of course, to measure. We use the ruler to measure what? To measure the length of something. The thermometer to measure the heat, how hot or cold it is. The scale, we use it to measure the weight. So you see, he is now in this definition, Dan Douglas is comparing the purpose of the test with the purpose of these tools. He wants to tell us that a test is a measuring tool, just like these tools, just like the ruler, just like the scale, and just like the thermometer. Okay, and he is what, in this definition, he applies this idea to the language test, to the field that we are specialized in. So he says that a language test is an instrument for measuring language ability. Okay, so what is the purpose now of a language test? Its purpose is to measure the student's ability, language ability. Definition number 7 says, testing, okay, including all forms of language testing, is one form of measurement. You see, again and again we are repeating, or not we are repeating this, but the definitions that have been set to clarify or to explain for us what test is, they all repeat the same idea, which is that a test is a measuring tool. A test is a measuring device. The purpose of the test is to measure. Okay, so testing, including all forms of language testing, is one form of measurement. For instance, language teachers test reading or spelling to determine to what degree their abilities are, these abilities are present in their learners. So when I am testing my students in reading comprehension, or in grammar, or in pronunciation, what is my aim? My aim is to measure how much they have learned, okay, regarding these components or skills of language throughout the whole course that I have been teaching them. Okay? Another definition, or definition number 8, says a test is a measurement instrument. Again, a test is a measurement instrument. Test often connotes the presentation of a set of questions to be answered. So this definition is telling us about the components of a test. Okay, so as well as being a tool for measuring the knowledge and the skills and the abilities of the learners, we need to know that this test is going to be made of what? So in this definition, we see that he's telling us that the tests usually suggest or means or indicates the presentation of a set of questions to be answered. So as a teacher, you give a number of questions to your students in order to answer them. This is what? This is a test. Okay? To obtain a measure. What is the purpose of making these questions and asking your students to answer them? Because you want to what? To measure. To measure what? Okay? Or what are you going to obtain? This measure, of course. This measure is going to be in which form? He's telling us that this measure, that is in a form of a numerical value. Okay? So after you get the answers of your students, what are you going to do as a teacher? You are going to score them, to put marks, to put scores. Okay, so these marks or scores that you are going to put on the answer of each student is the measure that you are after, because throughout this mark or throughout this score, you are going to be able to judge the knowledge or the abilities of your students. Okay, so this measure, which comes in a form of a numerical value, is a measure of what? Or is a judgment of what? It is a judgment of a characteristic, a feature. What kind of a feature? It can be a mental attribute, knowledge, and ability. okay, of a person in a given domain. For example, language, math, etc. Okay? The last definition we have for the test is that, and it is made by Anthony Green, 2014. He said, a test is an event. Okay, so what is a test? It is an event. And when we say it is an event, it needs what? It needs setting, time and place. So this event should be or should have a specific place to be conducted in and a specific time to be made in. Okay? So it is an event that is especially set up to elicit a performance. To elicit a performance, which means that you are going to ask your students in this event, which is a test, to present or to make, to produce something. Okay? Usually within a predetermined time frame. You are going to specify or to limit or to tell your students that this test is going to be limited in time. It is not going to be an open test. Okay? So, for instance, the final exams that we usually have at college, they are limited in for how many hours? 3 hours. Okay, while the semester's exam, the first semester exam and or the second semester exam, they are limited for what? For an hour and a half, 90 minutes. You see, so the test should have is an event. It should have a certain place to be conducted in. It should be specified in time. Okay, and throughout the test the test means that you are asking your students to produce something, okay, for the purpose of making judgments. So why are they producing, or what is the benefit of the thing that they are going to produce for you? It is beneficial, it is useful for you. Their performance in this test is useful for you because, as a teacher, because it will help you to judge. Judge what? To measure. Measure what? Knowledge, skills, or abilities of your students. Okay? You see? The same idea that we have here. In the course of a language test, the person being judged, who is the person that we judge now? Of course, he is what? Or she is the student. So, the assessee, a test taker, testee, or candidate, all these 4 terms mean what? Means the person who is going to take the test, the person who is going to answer the questions of the test. Who is he or she? The students. Please pay attention to the terms that we are going to use throughout this course. So what do we call the student? We call the student within the field of testing, we call him or her the assessee, the test taker, the testee, the candidate. Okay? So this assessee or test taker or testee or candidate will respond to a prompt. What does mean a prompt? A question. Okay? An instruction. This question or this an instruction can be in the form of a written test in which you ask him to write an essay, for example. Okay? Or it can be an oral test. For example, we have at college the exams of conversation courses. They are not written, they are oral. They are made in the form of an interview between you and your teachers. Okay? Or it can be a written test in the form of a set of choices on a test paper, just like the online exams that you have. Okay? most of the questions that you have in your online learning or teaching, they are made of choices. You only have to choose what the correct option. So the test taker's response. Okay, so now your students, the assessee, the test taker, the testees, the candidates have taken the test and they answered it, whether the test was written or oral. Okay, now what will happen next? The test taker's response, the answers of the students, of the test taker, will be or is what judged or scored according to a mark scheme. The teacher will take the answer sheets of his students or her students and will score them, correct them according to a mark scheme, according to the value that he has given for each question. This is a predetermined procedure. Okay, so of course the teacher must have planned for all these things. Okay, for the how many number of questions, what are the difficulty, how difficult they should be, what is the scoring scheme, all these should be planned, okay, before I give the test to my students to answer. Okay, so this is a predetermined procedure, such as identifying and calculating the proportion of correct answers. Or for instance, if your questions come in a form of a set of choices, you are going to count how many correct answers or how many errors your students each student has made. Okay, or if it is a written test in which you ask your students to write a paragraph or an essay, you are going to count the number of errors in this piece of writing. Okay, assigning points or marks to an essay to match descriptions presented on a scale, etc. So whatever scoring scheme that you are planning or you have planned to follow in scoring your the answers of your students, this will give you what? The outcome. Okay, the product, the final product. What is the final product? The final product or the outcome is a score or a grade that you are going, the numerical value that you are going to put on the answer sheet of your students. Okay, for example, you write 14 out of 20. What do we call this? We call this a score or grade. Okay, which is then formally recorded. And of course you should have a certain record, okay, a formal record in which you register or write down the score that each of your students has got in the test you have made for them. Okay, so this definition describes for us in detail the test and the procedure that we follow in testing our students. Okay, so as we said that this is the last definition that we are going to have for testing. I hope that you have time to watch this video. Watch it carefully, please. Study it. Try to understand the definitions I put here and the explanations that I made about them. Because in the class, okay, in the online class we are going to have on Sunday, I will not have time to repeat or to explain all these definitions. I have already done that in the video. So what I'm going to do is only to ask you about the things that you understood, okay, or you have understood from these definitions. I want you to form your own definition of a test in your own words. In this way, you are showing me that whether you have really understood what is presented here in the video or not. Okay? So, understanding language testing. Why should we understand language testing? Is it important? Okay? And language testing is important for whom? Who are the people that are involved in this procedure, in the process of language testing? And why is language testing important for them? So it is important to understand how language tests are designed and developed for 3 reasons. Okay? Sorry for this, it should not be a 3, it is 3 reasons without a. So first, language tests play a powerful role in many people's lives. Who are those people? Acting as gateways at important transitional moments in education, in employment, and in moving from one country to another. So, which people to whom language test plays an important role in? These people who want to have a move in their life, whether this move is going to be in education, from one state to another, from one stage to another, from the BA, for example, to the MA, or from the MA to the what? To the PhD. They should have a test. They should be tested. Okay? In employment, some companies, when you want to work for them, or you'd like to join them, they make for you a test. Okay? They test they measure your knowledge in certain things, even in the foreign language, even in English. Okay? And in moving from one country to another, when you want to leave your country and live or settle down in another country, the authorities in the new country, they require you that you know their language at least, in order to be able to live there and to settle down there. So they require from you to have for example a high score in TOEFL or IELTS. TOEFL and IELTS, they are what? They are tests. So since language tests are devices for the institutional control of individuals, you see, tests, and especially language tests, they are what? They are part of institutional, formal, educational. If you remember, we have used these terms in the definitions, the previous definitions that we have explained. Okay, so in education, in employment, in moving from one country to another, the authorities try to control people throughout what? Throughout testing. They do not accept anyone. They accept only the people who pass the test that they are making for them. So it is clearly important that they should be what? Understood and subjected to scrutiny. So when you are when you want to have, for example, your MA or your PhD, or work for a certain company, or move to live to another place, you should have a background about the tests that these institutions will require you to have. Okay? Second, language tests are important for the people working with language tests in their professional life. So, which people they are responsible for making tests? Okay, it is part of their profession or jobs. They are what? They are the teachers or administrators, because they are teaching to test, administering tests, or relying on information from tests to make decisions on the placement of students on particular courses. Okay? Some institutions, when they make a course, when they have courses for example, for teaching English as a foreign language, they make, first of all, a test for the candidates, for the students who want to join these courses, because the results, the scores that the students will get in these tests will determine they are on which level. Level A, level B, are they beginners, intermediate learners, advanced learners, because each level should have what? Each level should have a certain kind of syllabus, a certain kind of treatment, a certain kind of procedure to be taught. Finally, if you are conducting research in language study, you may need to have measures of the language proficiency of your subjects. So you are now in the fourth stage of your study at college, Department of English, and you are required to write a research paper. Some of you may choose to write about a certain component of language, okay, and he or she wants to measure the abilities of his or her colleagues in this component. Okay, do they know this component or not? For example, present perfect tense. So I suppose that I am a student and I see that or I find that my colleagues or Iraqi learners in general, they have a difficulty in using and identifying the present perfect tense, or they do not know how to use the prepositions, or they do not know, or they face, for example, a difficulty in pronouncing certain types of sounds like plosives. Okay, so how can I be sure of this? I cannot assume these things and say and presume that they are correct without proving that I am correct. How can I prove that I am correct? I should make a test, okay, for a group of students that represent the Iraqi learners, okay. Give them a number of questions, either they are ready-made questions or a kind of test that I am making that is suitable for the purpose of my research. And throughout this course that those students are going to get in this test, I'm going to judge whether I was right or wrong. Okay, so here test is also beneficial for us in conducting researches. So an understanding of language test is relevant both for those actually involved in creating language tests. So because you are going to be a teacher, okay, you should understand this procedure of a language test, okay. Because you are a student and you are required to make a research paper, you are required to understand what language test is, okay. You are going also to work after being graduated from college. You are going to work in educational institutions that depend on tests, okay. So you need to understand something about language tests. So all these contexts, is it clear? They require from you to understand what is a language, what language test is, and how to what is their purpose, and how to conduct them. Okay. So here we have finished with explaining the first term for in our course for this year, which is a test. Okay, thank you.